looking back at when you first started doing photography, was there a certain project or a certain series of photos that you think got you that MMA contract, or how did you first go from, an amateur to starting to book gigs, starting to build your...
Well, this is actually a pretty interesting story, and I'll try to consolidate it because it's kind of long, but I was just a guy sitting I was a guy in my home office in Dallas, Texas. I was just this guy. Nobody knew who I was, but I'd become when I started my photography in 99, and I'd been a photographer 7 years before that, but just very rudimentary or very amateur. I mean, I was far from professional. And so I never billed myself or called myself a professional photographer, but I did hang out with a few professional photographers. One was Stephen Elliott Hendricks, a guy in Dallas that had been to television broadcasting school way back, and he had worked in television. And he had become a photographer. So he'd give me a lot of pointers, and I was on some of his sets and some of his shoots. The thing that really jump-started my career is, one, I bought a digital SLR. And as far as I know, I was probably the first digital SLR owner in Dallas as a professional photographer that I bought in 99, which was a DCS 315 Kodak before Canon or Nikon, either one, had a DSLR out. So I started shooting my kids' sports. And then in 2001, Nikon released the Nikon D1, which was the same as my Nikon F5 35mm film body. So I jumped on that camera, and it was $5,000. I bought it, and the Kodak was $3,500. Mm-hmm. So, but I invested the money at the time because I had it, and then it just went from there because I think that camera was maybe 2.7 megapixels or something like that.
Wow.
But you could still get an 8x10 out of it. But what people still fail to realize is, unless I still shot film if I needed to do enlargements, like if I did a 16x20 bridal portrait or something like that was going to be in a 20x24 frame on a matte frame, I would do I would shoot that film. I would shoot those with film. But anything else, I mean, you're looking at it was still web stuff.
Yeah.
So you didn't need a lot of megapixels. It's the same nowadays. I mean, you think about your camera, they're 8 megapixels or whatever. 90% of the stuff, you're throwing it up on social media. Maybe 95%. When's the last time you printed something out? So it was the same in those days. I mean, prints were more prevalent in those days, but still, a lot of the stuff I was doing was I started building websites, and I used that camera for going out shooting my clients' photos, because that's how I really got into it. Is my step aunt and uncle hired me to do the website for their RV park down close to Austin on Lake Buchanan. And I'd called Austin and talked to 3 or 4 photographers in the local Austin area, trying to get them to go down to the lake and do photos. And I was paying them I offered them $300, and this was back in the 90s, which would be $900 today in Dallas. And every one of them flaked out. None of them did it. And I can't remember how much I charged, but anyway, I invested that money into that I made for my aunt and uncle, because they paid me, and I invested that money into that first Kodak camera. And then so I went down there, took pictures, and that kind of jump started everything.